Hello, everybody. This is John Coster at the Documentary Media Centre, and I'm delighted to be running this small conversation with a very good friend of mine, Kavita Ashok in New Delhi, over in India. Kavita, how are you?
Hello, John, and hello, everybody. I'm safe and sound. Besides so many things going around us, and the pandemic and a lot of misery and sorrow and little tears of joy of people who've come home safe and sound. So it's really been a whirlpool year, I could say.
Yeah,
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm doing good.
It's mixed blessings, really, isn't it? Because it seems to be, I've had several conversations lately about some of the positives that have come out of the pandemic when it comes to maybe doing more work with schools and reaching communities globally, where technology suddenly, it's not the challenge it was, because people know that they can use that technology now. And I'm thinking, well, actually, yes, for the first time, I thought technology was maybe bad and all the things it gets used for, but actually we can actually connect. But of course, we have to kind of balance that with the fact that, there's lots of people that have died in many countries. And I know at the moment, it seems like, you're having it particularly bad there in India. And I think everybody's experiencing it at different times. And I'm not really sure there's going to be any end in sight as well. More variants seem to appear day to day.
Yeah, we are, facing our own, hurdles and problems like any other country, whenever the pandemic has hit us. But I think for us, it's hit us hard, very, very, very sharply in the second wave. And of course, we've all lost. I myself have lost at least, I think 4 friends and 2 family members. So it's a lot because, within a span of 1.5 years, if you're losing people in the family and your friend circle, it actually scares you. It also makes you want to sit back and think what really is life, although it's a very philosophical thing to understand, but what really is it and who are the people who matter to me most. So I think in the pandemic, we also realized that it also is a big challenge to keep yourself cool and calm during this period of trial. And of course, we've all been working from home, and working from home has become the new norm. Technology is the new friend, is our best friend. Like, even people who were, I think, not using too much of Zoom meetings and, Skype and all other kinds of, media, but now everyone's connected to that. So thankfully, I think we've all been connected to our families every day through social media and all these mediums of technology. So I'm like, really, at least I'm happy that we have this facility with us now.
Yes, I mean, if none of this existed, then I think maybe some of the horrors that we've had in the past would be repeated in that way, where there wouldn't necessarily be the support networks for the increase in mental health and people's anxiety around isolation. At least we've got a way of connecting with information or people that are willing to talk to you. So it's that kind of balance, I guess, that very much about life, isn't it? That yin and yang, which is, for every positive, there's a negative, and every action gets a reaction. And of course, the really interesting thing at the moment is, as we try to mark particular international days, maybe for the second time, having done it last year, like, next Tuesday's World Oceans Day, we did an event last year. I'm certainly approaching each of those conversations, like the one I'm having with you today, to mark tomorrow's World Environment Day, is slightly different. It has to change, and it's evolved, but it's always tempered by that sort of, the enthusiasm is tempered by the fact that, maybe for the first time we have to be realistic as well, and maybe less hopeful in a way where it's, let's hope it's going to happen, to the point of, well, actually, what are we going to do to make sure that we can make that happen, because it's really important. I mean, are you finding that when you're talking to some of your volunteers and your friends, particularly all the things you do around the environment and sort of the women and health issues, that suddenly it's gone from, let's sort of like this kind of blind faith to let's do something, to actually, no, let's put some figures and numbers and timescales, because we really need to make a difference.
Yeah, that's right. See, it's been very sad that people like us who were very, very active, on ground work for the last 1 year, we've been home, in the sense that everything has been shut all over the world. Actually, gradually each economy is opening up, but I'm talking in the scenario of India presently. Like, we are not able to step out and do things like a campaign or a plantation. Although I did try in January, February, when the numbers were down. I did venture out and did something on no plastic and some women health issues and all. But I think majorly, even my own little efforts this year have majorly been moved from, directly planting trees. It has become more about how climate change has affected public health. So, there's a link. Whenever I talk to people, I try to make them understand through a dialogue. Like, see now, when earlier, everyone used to talk about how health of a nation, how health of the planet on the whole can be affected by natural disasters and deforestation and the change in climate and all. People never took it seriously, John, but now they do realize that so many things are man-made, and I think focus has now moved a little bit to collaborating public health with environment. So that's a new step. People have started understanding, it's sinking in. Even on social media, when I'm talking, I so many times link mental health, the pandemic, and the climate crisis, and people are able to relate now. So that's a shift. That's a shift which is very new, I feel. That's my personal experience.
Yeah, and it's about seizing that change and maybe willingness for people for the first time to see a connection through things that they always felt it was like, it's World Mental Health Day, it's World Environment Day, it's this. Suddenly to start thinking in a much more connected way. Because as an activist and an environmentalist and someone incredibly proactive as you are yourself, this must be almost like a dream come true, tempered again by everything that you've said so far, in the fact for the first time we've got people willing to look at these things. I mean, World Environment Day tomorrow, the theme is reimagine, recreate and restore. Yeah. And I think it's a really interesting way. There's a lot of people looking at those kind of themes now, reimagining, be creative, because it's so important, isn't it? We've got to get people to make those connections themselves in order for them to be able to do something.
See, I feel that communities now have, during the pandemic, one plus point we've seen all over the world is communities coming together, standing up for each other, which I think is brilliant. I think the world was going haywire and we were in such a rat race that nobody even turned back and looked if you had an accident, but now see, because a lot of this pandemic has brought together, I think huge communities are working together for the welfare of people, giving donations, even doing groundwork, taking people to hospitals. I think it's all over the world. People have been doing this very, very proactive in the field of reaching out. So whether it's in terms of mental health, connecting to a lonely person, or it's in terms of giving some kind of a help or aid to someone who needs a hospital or an oxygen cylinder. I mean, this has been a real chaos. So we all know our own families have been, looking for hospitals, and I've had the personal experience also of hunting for 2 hospitals in the middle of the night for some relatives of mine, and what a mess it was. And that time I think we realized that, firstly, why are we facing this? And secondly, who created this? Is it we ourselves? So I don't call this pandemic just, some shot in the dark. I think it's created by us. Humanity was heading for something like this. We have a very important role to play in this. I think I'm not going to name anybody, even doubt anyone, but I think everyone is collectively in this, whatever this dark period that we are facing. We are collectively, and we are part of the creation. So I think this pandemic gave us an opportunity to talk about mental health in a new dimension, to sit back and think, where are we lacking in public health? What are the facilities that the governments need to work upon? It's not just talking of policy making, because policy making and talking is a brilliant thing, but I don't think that matters anymore, because what is present in the ground, what facilities you're providing to your citizens at this point of time, this was a litmus test for particular governments, that how badly they have failed, how badly they've been, nobody's answerable to the citizens, so it was like a big chaos. So I think this gave us time to think, what are the systems of governments, how can we improve on public health, and is climate change a real serious issue? So now's the time to sit back and think, on this World Environment Day, I take this opportunity on behalf of my NGO Tree for Life to request everyone that sit back and think it's not just you, me, and activists who are responsible for this. We'll be working all through, I know, my life, but I think everyone needs to sit back and think, am I participative in this? What have I done wrong? What have I done wrong? So I think that thought is a big question now, which each one has to individually answer.
Yes, we often talk about rights, don't we? But we don't often talk about responsibilities as well. And I think this is that game changer. It's fascinating, isn't it? Something like Facebook or social media or Instagram always feed up these things like, you know, on this day, so and so, the world came close to ending, but this guy did something or this woman did something. Whereas in fact, this is probably the first time where something that is a disaster that can affect everybody can't be hidden. It's played out in real time, not just on the news, but in actually people's personal social media channels. I mean, I know, for example, you know, following you on Twitter and the people that follow you there and engage with you there in India, when you put one of your tweets out, to see the diversity of people that get involved, but you're also seeing requests for oxygen, you're seeing requests for hospital spaces or trips, and suddenly in your timeline, it goes from something that's just you're seeing either as a hashtag or a trend or watching on the news to being something that's actually quite real and feels quite personal to you, because there's also an element of, well, you can't do anything about it. So you suddenly feel this, you know, the override of, I think if people felt like they can't do anything, therefore it affects their mental health even more. And I think what I do here is the fact that because I know I can do something, I'd much rather do something in the way that I do it by trying to create these connections that helps other people to do things. And I think that's one of the great things about being connected with you and the times that I've spoken to you throughout the pandemic, really. I mean, you know, without the pandemic, you and I probably would never have met and still be doing things and thinking about all the ways that we can help each other, having never met, in two different cities, in two different size cities, you know what I mean? In a way where, you know, you can create friendships and create opportunities to do things that bring people together and celebrate the fact that we've got so much that we can do in partnership, rather than let's point out all the reasons why we couldn't do anything.
I think also I'd like to mention that the way we are working now has also changed. You know, earlier we believed that if you're working for environment, if you're working for conservation, of, you know, whether it's forest or river or something, I myself always believe that, you know, I have to be right there. I have to be on the ground. I have to be with the community to address this issue. But the pandemic has taught us that you can, you know, communication, like creating a dialogue, John, that you create with Doc Media Center is fabulous. So platforms like these are really playing a major role, because how we are connecting to the whole world, sitting at our own homes in our own countries. This is a new trend which never existed before. Earlier, everyone did their own bit, you know, in their own countries. I think, you know, somebody's working in Brazil, somebody's fighting for the Amazon, I'm fighting for the cleanliness of Ganga River. So it was very individualistic. Now it's very collective. And as you say, on social media, on Twitter, we see people from all over the world are actually facing the same problems, the same questions. So I think that, you know, each one is, of course, everyone is the same, but how beautifully people are reaching out to connect, to help. I think it really needs an applaud. We have proved that humanity still exists within us.
Yeah, the connection between real people on the ground. It doesn't have to be politicians and that big stuff. It's just about people that are doing things and sharing, you know, what's working with them. Now, the last time I spoke to you, there'd been quite a large natural disaster there that was dominating the news, with the dam that busted and stuff like that. Sort of, you know, I mean, I know now you've got all this, you know, the COVID dominating everything and stuff like that. But, you know, has there been any more sort of news on that? Because I remember reading something as well about saying there were people that were monitoring that and some funding got cut and they weren't monitoring it anymore and stuff. So, you know, all of this stuff can get lost, can't it, in the COVID news?
You know, as per our theme, I think that let's take it this way, that we had this disaster in Uttarakhand last year, right? And so many villages were, you know, ruined by this rush of water, and it was really, really bad flood. I think what the theme this year is about conservation of restoring the ecosystem. So that's what actually we did. It was restoring the people, their livelihood, their villages, giving them protection. There were so many teams of, national disaster control teams, and the army and the air force. Everyone was working together to settle these people. Firstly, to save them and to settle them. So I think what needs to be addressed more is to avoid it, how to protect people from this. So always, it doesn't have to be defense. There has to be a prevention process, I think. So prevention is something we have to look into, because Uttarakhand it is a recurring problem there because of the topography of the land and everything. There is always an issue. Every year we have this kind of thing. And recently we've had these, 2 cyclones in India, which have really played, hell, in the Bengal, Odisha, and the south of India. So I think so many natural disasters are coming. They are truly giving us a signal. It's a signal from the universe to mankind. I think time to love nature and give back instead of just keep on taking. And we're ruining the temperature, the sea levels, the heat, the rainfall. I think we are playing a major role in messing the whole planet up.
Yeah. Now, just an interesting point, because I know you wanted to raise this as well, and it's certainly something I would never even have thought about, to be honest, because religion doesn't play a big role in my life, and or faith or anything like that sort of stuff. I kind of believe in humankind and trying to do something positive. But you were saying about, particularly in the East, the role that religion plays in doing certain things or not doing certain things as well. And I'd never really thought of it in that concept. So where were you coming from when you suggested that we should have a conversation around religion and its involvement in things like conservation and stuff?
I recently did a talk with someone where we were discussing only this topic, environment and dharma. And dharma here will not only mean religion, it means what is, dharam is like what is correct, what is the right action.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think it has a major, I feel in the Eastern countries, religion also plays a very, very major role, because, let me tell you a small example, that suppose in certain cultures, when a person dies, the body is cremated, right? And the ashes are put into the river Ganga, especially in India, so in the river. Now what happened, I'll tell you a very sad example. During the pandemic, I'm sure you've seen it in the news, BBC and all was featuring it. During the pandemic, for the COVID patients, cremation was, some places it was not possible. There were too many patients at a particular peak time. So what people did, just because they thought, okay, we can't cremate them, we have no facility, no, at the cremation ground. So just took the bodies and put them in the Ganga river. So the religion played such an important, part in their heads. I don't know whether it was knowledge, availability of things, or it was just that factor inside them. Okay, let's at least do this. So this is a pious thing. This is a ritual which we have to do. So it's a very sad thing. But I wanted to mention not only this. I just wanted to say that all the mythology, even the Sanatan Dharma. When you talk of Ramayana, when you talk of Mahabharata, I'm talking of Indian mythology. All these Gita and all these books, they pay a lot of attention, and there's a lot of mention in Sanskrit about how various trees were worshipped. So many rivers were, there was it was, I think, basically conservation only, John. It was a way to conserve the environment and nature. Like, don't pollute your rivers, don't do this, don't plug these trees, don't cut them, don't chop them. So it was very regionalized. Sorry. But I think if people are ready to listen from that angle, it's okay. At least save the planet, because there has to be some deterrent somehow, whatever works. I think whatever works with whatever part of the world. If in the East, religion and faith is very strong, if it works and if it tells people, don't do this, nature, this is Mother Nature, and these trees are gods, the sun is God, you're worshipping the river. It's been like this, and people have done this for eons. So that's all right. So I think that if you can link positively faith, religion, whether it is whether it is meditation, whether it is yoga. See, there are so many things. Whether it is Ayurveda, everything is connected to nature here. So in the East is very strong in believing this. So I think it plays a major part here. In our part of the world, religion and faith plays a major part in what action we are taking to things around us, to what environment around us.
And when you were having that conversation that you were talking about, you had a conversation around like the conservation and the environment and climate change and religion. What sort of things, what sort of comments were coming out? Is it the fact that people were agreeing with you that maybe we need to connect in a different way?
Yeah, people see it was an international forum also, and people were agreeing. But I remember that there were some people from Indian media, maybe some journalists or all, who knew what I'm saying, who understood, but they wanted to be so sure. They told me, please quote from where have you read this? Please quote the name of the book, the scripture, the something like Gita and all. So people are aware, but they just needed authenticity to understand that our religion, our whatever gods we believe in, whatever we believe in, our gurus have always even had this deep faith in loving nature and its protection. So I think what we are talking today is restoring the ecosystem, protecting it, conserving it. It's not a new concept. It's a very, very age-old concept. It's just that I think in urbanization, we just forgot about it. We thought this is all nonsensical, saving the forest and not cutting trees and just making more buildings. We forgot it. It's time to get back to the old, I think, get back to the traditional.
Now, one of the things that often plays out in international conversations as well is the fact that the more developed a country is, exploiting resources like natural resources, coal, oil, maybe nuclear power, things like this. They're the ones that have traditionally been quite exploitative and taken resources from certain parts of the world and got themselves in a situation. And of course, the irony is now that suddenly, a developing country or a country that is driving and striving forward, that has its own natural resources and stuff, like somewhere like India, to be able to, take its place on the global stage. It's having the issues with not necessarily looking after its population. It's looking after certain people, but then also the bigger countries tend to come along and say, you can't dig up your oil, you can't do CO2, you can't burn this, you can't burn coal. And it's almost like they're trying to put the higher cost of the energy, like green energy and solar and wind, onto countries that are turning around and saying, well, hang on, you're all right because you've exploited it all yourself to get in this position. Why aren't you paying for it? Because you've caused the problem. We're just trying to keep up and compete. And I remember seeing that come out in Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth, the follow-up documentary, where he was meeting with some representatives of the Indian government, and they were like, well, hang on, you've exploited it and done all that. Why are you saying to us that we've got to do it? And I understand that. I can appreciate that.
Under the leadership of our Prime Minister, I think that there are one or two things which I want to mention when you're talking of clean energy. Recently, electric cars, I think, is our answer to the fuel challenge that you're talking about. It's an answer actually. It's just not a fancy project of the government. It's an answer to saying that the diesel, the petrol, the price is so high and it's rocketing. And what about non-availability in the future? So our answer is there. We are already working on electric vehicles, electric cars, electric rickshaws. They're on the ground. It's just going to take a few years. Like I myself have a car which is hybrid, like it's diesel and petrol, but I'm sure the third option is soon going to be green energy, and you can go and charge it at a station. So that's all coming up. And also I think solar is very, very it has caught up very, very, I think, on a very, very impressive scale, because I belong to Rajasthan, Jaipur, John, and there I think Rajasthan is the biggest state which is promoting a lot of solar energy to its farmers, for its artisans, for its women entrepreneurs, or whoever is ready to put up a small industry or a small unit of production or anything, solar panels. So I think there are states, one or two in the south also. So I think solar energy and the electric vehicles are two new steps which I have seen in the last 1 year, and they are doing tremendous work in this. So I think every country has to find an answer for themselves. They know what suits their profile of people and what resources they have.
Do you think the pandemic is the big game changer for having these kind of conversations? You know, influencing the media, influencing politicians, influencing big business and conglomerates to maybe be more engaged with their population in taking them on that journey, but actually physically being seen to be able to do something and actually make these changes that are needed?
See, I think if you know if I were a wise politician, I would take the pandemic as an opportunity to connect to my people and do so much work for them. You know that I would restore all the faith. The World Environment Day is not only restoring about the environment; it's also restoring faith in humanity, in communication on different platforms and on different levels of people, as you're just saying. That I think it's pandemic is an opportunity. I would like to say for world leaders to connect, to create a dialogue with each other, to reach out and help, whether it's with vaccines or whether it's with medicine or whether it's with research. You know, there are so many things. So the pandemic should be a binder instead of breaking us. I think it should bind us together.
Yeah. Now, one of my friends in Cambodia, I've got a couple of young journalist friends over there that work in the media. One of them has been using her wages, her own money, with a group of friends, and have been buying trees and planting trees. Which is fantastic, and particularly the temperature that they're doing it in as well is very admirable. I'm not sure I'd survive more than 20 minutes in that kind of heat, but working very hard to do it. You know, planting sort of 200, 300, 400 trees, I think 500 trees. So as the president of your Tree for Life NGO, tell us a little bit about maybe what you were doing pre-pandemic and the sort of things that you'd like to continue with when we get back to whatever the kind of new normal is going to be.
Okay, for since 2008 we've been active on ground, and I have, as a team we work with schools and colleges, educational institutes, because I totally believed that the seed has to be sown when the mind is young. You know, when the mind is young, it's very easy to sow a seed of consciousness of greenery, consciousness of nature, and the love for the planet. So we started working with small children. I've even worked with, kindergarten kids who were given plants, and we did projects, and we had a day off in the garden. So I'm not saying that it made a big difference to me. It made a big difference to the children because they understood this is part of curriculum. This is part of education. So I think education, we tried to bring environment into the education system. And sometimes if you see in certain parts of the world, it was not included, First is this, we approach the younger generation, the children. And secondly, we've been working on a very big campaign for no plastic, because that's one of my favorite campaigns, no plastic. We've been talking to people, generating a lot of awareness, giving away cloth bags, even going and creating talks and workshops. Then we're also doing something on waste management, which is a pretty recent thing for us, composting and all. We just had a workshop in this January, because the little loophole in the pandemic numbers, and we quickly did a workshop, with people around us. It's an opportunity, I thought, so quickly we did that. So I think public health, I have always been very active in public health, working with so many hospitals in Delhi, NCR, and so many other places. And I always thought that how can health not be connected to air pollution level, the quality of water that a city is getting? So we started addressing this a few years back. And once the pandemic is over, presently we are working on, I think all of us are just concentrating on helping and reaching out to people, getting them sometimes, hospitals, medicines, connecting people, and, making a call if we can, and getting a bed for someone in the hospital. So all that is public health, I agree. I think time now is to, when the pandemic subsides, and I pray it really does that very soon all over the world for all my fellow citizens, I think we'll get back with a bigger roar, a bigger energy to, work more, because I personally feel people will be more connected now, because for the last 1.5, 2 years, I've seen on all social media, wherever I reach out to people, I feel the response is very good, because they started appreciating our work even more than before. So although we are not on ground, we are just on virtual media, but the work is more appreciated. I think people realize that we did a mistake by ignoring the planet and just, not giving an iota of thought what we were doing. We just went about too much plastic, too much urbanization, too many cutting of trees, moving of migrants from the forest, creating some industry there, dirtying the rivers. Air pollution is a mess in so many countries. For us, we can't breathe 3 months a year. So I think people now have the time to sit back and understand that, do we want to live like this again after the pandemic, and are we going to leave something clean and green for posterity, for our children, or not? So I think that awareness, the dialogue that platforms like yours are doing is really remarkable, John, because I'm saying from my heart, because it gives an opportunity to reach out and people speak from their heart, on platforms like these. Like I speak from my heart on whenever I talk to you. So, it's very easy for people to connect. So we've gained that connect. Once the pandemic is over, we will be back on the ground and multifold more energy. And I think I'll have more people working with me then, volunteering.
Very good, very good. So my final question, I want to talk to you. I mean, obviously, there's no doubt in your passion and commitment, absolutely, from the very first time that I met you. And I should imagine you turning up in a school, whether it's a kindergarten, a primary school, secondary school, talking to university students or anything that you get involved in, that you're able to deliver it in a way that people understand and that is personal to them and why they should make that difference. Now, you're also on the television quite a lot over there. You're brought on as a commentator, and you participate in panels as well. Do you feel that before the pandemic, when you were advocating for these kind of things, the environment and public health, that sometimes the media were just hosting that conversation because it was an easy one to have, because it was trendy, maybe someone in the government had spoken about it, something internationally had happened, and the people on the panel with you were sometimes being seen to be saying the right things or heard to be saying the right things, whereas the panels that you're on now, for example, people are suddenly thinking, well, actually, no, this is something real. We really need to be doing something about it because it's gone beyond a topic. It's actually something that's relevant to me as an individual in my life, because I never thought it would be, because it was always other people that were affected by it.
John, in 2013, I remember very, very clearly, I was on an English news channel, and I think I was the first person, this was before the election, I was the first person in 2013 who sat there on the news channel, national channel, and I requested people, I said, if you're voting this time, please choose a leader who's going to work for environment, because clean air is your right. This is what I said. I said, clean air is your right. You have a right to breathe. You have a right to get clean water in your homes. But you know what? I don't think people took me seriously that time. What you're saying is correct. That time they must have thought some fancy woman's coming on TV and she's saying something. I think so. I'm not sure. Please forgive me. But I think that time it was a norm, because climate change was catching up, and I had been a media person, I had a glamorous background. So people thought, oh, she's moved from glamour to this environment and social work. I don't think people took me very seriously when I started in 2008. But, perseverance is the key. And we were so consistent in our work. We started sharing our work, and people understood when I started approaching them. Listen, I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do this with a corporate. I want to do this with your college. Then people started understanding that, listen, this lady is serious. So I think no hard feelings, but I think sometimes it takes time for a concept to set in. Sometimes people take time to believe in you. But I have been working hard. I will, because now I know they believe in me. In 2008 and 2012, 13, when I was talking of air pollution and river pollution and all, nobody used to take it seriously. People would say, yeah, you speak well and you have a good presence on television. That was the kind of attitude I used to get sometimes, But now you're right. After the pandemic, I think this will be a major shift.
Yeah, I think so, because I mean, we're probably seeing it in our media as well. You know what I mean? There were trendy things to talk about and stuff, and now, something like the pandemic comes along, and yes, it affects us all in different ways. Don't get me wrong. Wherever we are in the world, everybody will be affected in a different way, and obviously, there's 3 billion people out of the 7 billion that don't have actually access to technology and stuff. So we've still got a long way to go before everybody's included in technology as the savior kind of thing. But it's very much around the fact that you know, some people are talking about these things because they're trendy or it's the latest thing or it's politically correct. Whereas actually to be consistent and be the person that's pointing these things out, well, suddenly driving to a TV or a radio station to host a show and bringing someone like you in where they're talking about rivers they drive past or air they don't have to breathe because they're in their air-conditioned car, suddenly becomes very different when it's starting to affect them and their family. That's when people tend to bring about change, is when you can make the connection between what's happening to someone else and it directly impacting on you. And I think that's where the role that you have to play is such a key one, is because you've been consistent with your message, not from 2013 when it's the first time you mentioned it on telly, but from 2008. You know, so there's that kind of knowledge that's there, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think it's warriors like us, and you know, all over the world, there are so many people who are doing such good work. I even admire and follow young people who are connected to 10 people. I have no problem following them on social media or connecting to them or reaching out to them even for my work here in India, whichever state I go to work in, because I feel that is not important. The idea, the mission is, to solve issues like drinking water not available. The rivers were shrinking in some parts of India. I think it was in Rajasthan or Gujarat, like 2-3 years back, we addressed that issue. So the idea was to address the issue, to bring it to the notice of the politicians who are watching the program, or who understand that there are like 500 kids standing with her today at a platform, children and youth and college students, and they are speaking out their heart, and they are saying, don't cut trees, don't use plastic bags, quit this, don't pollute your oceans and rivers, save wildlife. So I think it makes a difference. My power, I totally always say, John, is always the people. Without a community, I cannot work. I just can't stand there and save the planet alone. I need a lot of people around me. I need that nice energy, and I need slowly, even if you give me non-believers, slowly I can convert them into believers. That's not an issue. Slowly I think they will understand. Because even if I push hard and say this is what we want to do, sometimes people are very closed. There are people who are very closed, and they're very negative about anything that another person is doing. You must have seen there are people who troll you for nothing wrong that you've done. You put a post and people troll you for silly reasons, and it's just like so negative. But thing is not to get bogged down with it, and I never will, and I never have. It doesn't matter to me. My mind is very clear. I have my focus, and I'm happy that more people join in. It's more participative. And I'll tell you a very, very quick incident, that there was this PIL which I had filed for a wildlife sanctuary in Kedarnath, in Uttarakhand only, whichever area you were talking of, the flood area. So there was a wildlife sanctuary. There is a wildlife sanctuary where there was a lot of noise pollution, and so I had filed a PIL in 2000. I won it in 2017. That case with the government, and I won that case. Okay. Now the thing is, that time even my friends and relatives thought, oh, okay, fine, you won it, it's okay. But now they realize that, see, it was basically to save the wildlife species from getting into extinction. It was to save the children. They were going through a hell of a noise pollution when the helicopters were roaming around above their classrooms, taking people for tourism there, for religious purposes. Now you're saying, see how religion is connected to environment in there. So people have understood slowly that all that we've been doing is not in vain. And my idea is not to prove a point. My idea always has been to inspire more people. Even if I inspire one person a day, it's good enough for me. That's 365 in a day. So I can convert non-believers into 365 believers.
That's it, isn't it? I think it's people like ourselves, we have to redefine what success is. Sometimes it's the fact that one person has even gone away and thought the fact that was a possibility, that they could do that or save that or change their own way of thinking. It's not the big successes, it's not the stadiums, it's not the documentary making, it's the how do we get that stuff to be seen by the right person that you can turn around and get them to go away and go, do you know what, yeah, maybe I could do something about that. And that's what I love about the work that you do, and why it's great to be able to talk to you today to mark World Environment Day. So thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us, Kavita.
Thank you, John. And I just want to request everyone who's watching the show, please keep tuning into Doc Media Center, because these people do great work. They're lovers of environment. And so I'm so in love with this platform, and I'm so happy to be here all the time. And keep going green and clean, and make sure on the other side of the pandemic, we create a greener, cleaner planet for all of us. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Kavita. Bye.